Well, thank you very much. And goodness, that makes me sound like I'm important or something, which clearly isn't true. But I am very grateful that in spite of that fact, you fine folks came to visit with me today, and I'm really grateful for your time. I think I hope it will be very much worth your while, because what I'm here to tell you is that you're on the brink of changing the world. You are about to be hope for a good part of the world, and you're going to start that by creating a lot of jobs and making a lot of money. And I think we can all agree that that is a very good thing. I'm just really excited about, and I think a lot of other people like me in the United States will be extremely excited about when they learn of what you have done with ZEDE. This is just an incredible thing, and I hesitate to call it a reform, because that's not really what it is. It is a tremendous innovation. It is unlike anything that exists anywhere in the world. The only thing you can really compare it to was not done in the way that you are doing this. You could compare it to Singapore a couple generations back. You could compare it to Hong Kong before they became an economic powerhouse. But it's certainly not just a special economic zone. It's certainly not one of the many, many experiments that have been tried around the world so far. A special economic zone is not a bad thing, and I'm not knocking that, and many of those are very successful, but basically it's just like competing. Oh, thank you. Goodness. Good man you are. It is very much like competing on price. And, you know, competing on price obviously can be very successful. There are a lot of phone makers in the world making a great deal of money by selling you a cheap cell phone. And that's great. But I bet you what she really wanted was an iPhone. And everybody compares everything to the iPhone. And okay, if you have a Samsung, that's cool too. But, you know, Apple invented it. Apple started it, just like you're starting this. That's the gold standard. And when other countries do someday what you're doing today, they're going to say, we want to be Honduras. And isn't that cool? Isn't that exactly what you wanted to hear? I mean, this is, I understand very, very well from a business perspective how powerful a thing that can be. And I don't want to overstress the Apple example too much, but it really is a powerful one. It's worth noting that Apple wasn't always what it is today. In the 90s, the belief, very widespread throughout the United States, was that Apple was going to go bankrupt, and if it survived at all, it would probably be a subsidiary of Oracle or Microsoft or somebody. Apple was creating something that people didn't understand the fullness of when it fully evolved, fully emerged, became what it could be. There were times when it wasn't obvious what they had. And yet, the fact is, even in the beginning, even back in the oldest days, Microsoft built one of the most incredible businesses in the history of the world, largely by copying what Apple was doing. They had set a standard. People hadn't recognized that it was the standard yet, but it was the standard. And it took a while for that to work out. So you should not be discouraged if by next year everybody in Honduras doesn't have a Mercedes. You shouldn't hold yourself to unrealistic standards. But the fact is, by continuing to emphasize excellence over merely price, Apple has become one of the world's most trusted brands for years now. Briefly, it was the largest company that had ever existed in the history of the world, and it probably will be again before the year's out. And how does that apply to Honduras? Well, obviously in many, many ways, but let's look directly at ZEDE and what that reform means. Again, price is a factor. You guys haven't left out the economic component. It is good to have a low tax jurisdiction. It is good to have a low regulation jurisdiction. That's very attractive to me, I assure you. I'm very, very interested from the perspective of my own businesses in what you're doing. And that's great. But you know what I'm more interested in? I'm more interested in consistent, predictable, well-understood legal jurisdictions. And honestly, there are aspects of the legal climate in the United States that aren't as appealing today as maybe they used to be. And I'm not knocking the United States. I love my country. I know you love yours. And I'm an attorney, actually, by training. So when I talk about the legal profession, I'm talking about myself. But the fact is, there are aspects of it that could be better. There are aspects of it that could be cost competitive. An example of that would be in healthcare. Healthcare today, as you know, is the hottest topic in the political discussion in the United States. And with very, very good reason. It is $2.7 trillion of our economy. It is 18% of the economy of the United States. And that's just a staggering number. It's a staggering number. And all the more so when you understand how that just dwarfs, I mean, whole areas of the world. It's insane what we're spending in certain respects. And I can tell you where the insanity lies. We're doing some things less well than we could. One of those is litigation. In the British common law tradition, in nearly every country that has adopted it, we have certain legal constructs that allow for the mitigation of certain levels of litigation that in the United States we've allowed to get out of control. There are actually more lawyers, for instance, in the city of Dallas, Texas, than in the entire nation of Japan. You know, we like to sue each other. We just do. And that makes it kind of hard to practice medicine now. And I think this is something we're going to handle just fine. But it's an opportunity for you, because for a doctor to practice medicine, he has to carry malpractice insurance against the risk of litigation that is getting more and more expensive. If in ZEDE you have a jurisdiction that has all the predictability of the American legal system, but less cost, you have the opportunity to provide health care that is every bit as good as that in the United States, but markedly cheaper, without competing on labor prices. Now, I want you to think about that. That's a really big deal. You know, all of these economic zones we talk about really at their core come down to the issue of, well, can your workers do this cheaper? Which is another way of saying, can your workers live less well than I get to? I don't think that's a good plan. I'm really not in favor of that. If the whole system is dependent on you being poorer than me, that's not a good answer. The better answer is what you've done with ZEDE. You have an opportunity to reduce costs in a way that in no way hinder any person in Honduras from having the exact same wage and standard of living I have, because you're able to compete on other things that we're not doing as well as maybe you can, like the legal climate. What you've done there, I just think is fascinating. And I think as more and more American businesses see it, they're going to be utterly intrigued by, again, Honduras, a place that in many cases may not even be on their radar right now. It's a way to cut costs that helps everybody. Now, that's really exciting. Okay, you know, let's look beyond that. We're talking about healthcare. Let's talk about healthcare in a little bit more practical way in terms of jobs right now. As you know, when Jamaica got very serious about tourism, they set out to create a tourist industry there, and they over a very short period of time generated about 200,000 new jobs. And I think you'd agree that's a pretty good record. Costa Rica, in a similar amount of time, generated about 100,000 new jobs. This is tourism. Well, I've never been to Honduras before this week, but we've been around it a little bit this week, and I can tell you, this is a place I would want to come back and be a tourist. So I encourage you to develop a booming tourist industry. I totally believe that you can. But how about if you do something better than that? Because as we all know, in part for the reasons I just stated, there's a booming industry in medical tourism. Now, that's not just because of price. I'll give you an example. We know somebody who, I think they went to Costa Rica, and the wife had to have some kind of strange medical procedure. I don't know what it was. The husband went with her and, of course, played golf the whole week. He had a ball. There's a reason to come here that is better than going to the hospital down the street. You know, you have things to offer that are unique and valuable, and again, produce wealth for all involved. But let's look at it from a medical tourism perspective. Those jobs in Jamaica produce, on average, $1,000 per tourist. So if I go to Jamaica, on average, I'm going to put about $1,000 into the Jamaican economy. That creates a certain number of jobs, and that's fine. But if you have a hospital, if you have a clinic, if you are engaged in this slightly different thing, first, every single person who comes needs several more people to serve them than if they were just a tourist in a hotel room. Second, all of those people, well, maybe not all, maybe the janitor doesn't, but everybody else needs to be better trained, which means somebody is going to be paying to train your people and your workforce. And that doesn't have to come from you, because they've already decided for their own reasons to be here, and now, okay, well, here's a person that we need to train. Would it cost more to train them in the United States or more to train them in Honduras? Clearly it costs less to train them in Honduras. No problem, we're here. So they are paying to educate your workforce. And what kind of education are we talking about? Well, you know, we need nurses, we need administrators, we need accountants, we need lawyers, we need all kinds of things. When you start talking about a hospital, you're talking about a little city. I mean, this is an extraordinary production when you put it on. Sherry's and my son, Archer, is a doctor at the Mayo Clinic. And if you go to the Mayo Clinic, you're just shocked at all of the stuff they have. It's quite an enterprise. And if that's here, that starts working out through the whole economy. But let's get to the bottom line. Like I said, I go to Jamaica. Statistics say, on average, I spend $1,000. When I had my gallbladder out, I spent $30,000. The difference in, well, $1,000 and $30,000 would be, a lot. And if that's coming to you and not Jamaica, that's a really good thing. Now, am I saying this in a way that somehow competes with the United States? Am I torpedoing my own country? No, I don't think so at all. I think this adds tremendous value to the United States. I think this is something that is incredibly good for us. Why? Well, because, yeah, on the one hand, there are guys who might not be making money on those patients, but on the other hand, there are thousands, if not millions, of patients who are saving money that goes back into the U.S. economy. So, you know, this is why freedom is such a good idea. You know, if you reduce costs for anybody, you're actually making life better for everybody. It's just marvelous how that works. And when we get closed-minded, as some of the politicians do in every country, and certainly mine, and we think, oh, well, we've got to keep this all in one place. Well, that's just foolishness. That's not how the world works. You guys have an opportunity to become an essential and important part of the American supply chain And, you know, that's not a patriotic statement. That's an opportunity statement. That's a business statement. You know, if you were sitting right next to China, you should probably be part of the Chinese supply chain. This is a tremendous benefit that you are in my time zone, that I can call you in normal business hours, that it's 2 hours away. And by the way, there are 1 million of your countrymen in the United States, so we know people from here, and we're friends, and we get to be friends with you, and that networking becomes self-fulfilling in that because you've provided an opportunity that we can make use of and you can make use of. All of these relationships are very powerful things. There is a partnership here in the making that is quite extraordinary. Now, can I predict the number of jobs? I really can't, but you look at Singapore and you see, I mean, it's a miracle. We were just there about a year ago. It's amazing. I mean, you look at parts of Singapore and you just kind of wonder, wow, we don't even have this in Manhattan. You know, it's just such a success story. Does that hurt America? No, that's a huge benefit to America. They're strong, they're rich, they're self-sufficient. They aren't looking for a handout. They're investing in the global economy. They're a shining example to the world. That's your future. They aren't going to be talking about Singapore in 20 years. They're going to be talking about Honduras. And probably in a lot fewer years than that, El Salvador and Nicaragua and maybe Cuba are going to be talking about Honduras, which means that your experiment, your example, your success leads to more liberty, more people with opportunity, more people with hope. I grew up in a little bitty state in America called Arkansas. And some of you may have heard of it because of Bill Clinton, but otherwise you probably haven't. And we're very poor. And we have a few things going for us. We have Walmart, and Walmart's pretty cool. And, you know, we've got some other stuff. We've got beautiful mountains. You know about that. And, you know, we've got lovely little towns and great traditions and lots of things that we care about and not much money. And it was my great privilege before I went to Silicon Valley and did any of that stuff to work for Governor Mike Huckabee. And I was his policy director for about a year. And of course, economic development was very, very high on our priority list. We were working on that just as you're working on that. And I can tell you, one of the biggest problems is the lack of hope. When people don't believe they can be more than they are, they sit on their hands and they do nothing and they never become more. This is a way to give your people hope. But the second lesson from that is it will not happen on its own. You have to go get it. And you've laid the foundation. Now let me tell you what you absolutely have to do to succeed with it. You have to go market this like crazy. If you haven't heard of Arkansas, you're probably not going to locate any of your factories in my home state. That's just not going to happen. You guys need to go tell Exxon to build their next refinery here. You need to go tell Nissan to build their next auto plant here. You need to go tell them that it's not just about being in the CAFTA space, as powerful as that is. It's that you have the most powerful legal and economic advantages to give anybody in the entire CAFTA space, in the entire NAFTA space. You have just vaulted to the head of the class, and you can show them that, and they can come here, but only if you let them know it's true. You have to market this. And by the way, I'll be thrilled to help you because I'm excited about this. I think this is wonderful. I think it will change the whole world. But let's not have any illusions. None of these things happen without incredible work. Singapore went out and told the world its story. You have to do that too. You have to. The result of that will be game-changing. And I really applaud you for this. Again, this is not a reform I think that's the wrong terminology. This is an invention. This is like creating the computer or the internet, or in a more directly analogous comparison, this is like the English Bill of Rights. This is like the U.S. Constitution. This is like Magna Carta. This is something the world has not seen before. And when you make it the success it can be, it's going to help lift huge portions of the world out of poverty. And I can't think of a better goal than that. So I applaud you. I am thrilled to get to be here and talk to you. It just really seems wrong to me that I would be speaking to you. You guys have just done something that I should be listening to you about, and I'm so grateful for that. And if I can be of any help in any way, I certainly want to. Now, with that said, I should hush, and if you have any questions, I'd love to take them. I will have to use this gizmo, though, because my high school Spanish was not very good.